My dad was once a police officer in 1977 and had to retire because of one terrifying event that left him traumatized with nightmares and depression. And even to this day, he can't get over everything he witnessed and went through at that crime scene that started his downfall. This is his story, told exactly how he revealed it to me. I used to be a policeman and one that patrolled the more rural areas out in the country along with my partner, who was quite new to the force. He was still green and relied on me to point him in the right direction at certain points, since he really didn't have experience of dealing with the local riffraff. Like the time we were arresting a man who was heavily on drugs to the point his entire body was twitching, and while questioning him, my partner would clam up a bit, which caused me to finish questioning the suspect. But most of our time wasn't in town. We spent a lot of our shifts parked on the side of the road right next to a cornfield, where we would monitor the speed of each vehicle that passed us by. Most days, we would pull over your typical speedster and other times drunk drivers, in which you would get a bunch out in the country. But that one night that hell was brought into my life is when my partner and I were sent to investigate a disturbance at an abandoned lumber factory, where supposedly a girl was heard screaming by the people living in the houses nearby. I knew something bad was to come right when we pulled into the overgrown parking lot due to me getting a bad feeling in my gut, and I knew right then and there to call in for backup before we made our way inside. Afterwards, we cautiously made our way to the front door, while trying not to reveal any signs of our presence. We slowly opened the door, me being the first to walk in, but as soon as I did, everything went black. The next thing I remember was waking up in some room with blood running down my face and a pounding headache, and also hearing the screams of agony coming from my partner, who I witnessed being dragged out of the room by at least 4 men who were dressed in black, while leaving a trail of blood behind him. I tried to rush to my partner's aid, but would realize that a nail was stuck in my right leg, and as soon as the realization kicked in, that's when the pain did too. Those deranged lunatics hammered a nail in my leg while I was unconscious, but even though I was hurting in 2 different areas of my body, I still managed to make it to my feet, where I would begin to pursue our captors and my partner, using his terrifying screams as a point of destination. And man, hearing the uncomfortable shouting my partner let out still wakes me up at night. I managed to stumble my way to the front of the building where we had entered, just in time to see not only the 4 men, but at least 10 more people, being women and men, standing in a circle around him, my partner, where they all with raised machetes they had gripped in their fists and began to chop him into pieces as I stood there watching in absolute horror. There was nothing I could have done. They took my sidearm and I was barely able to walk. The only thing I could have done was hide behind some of the old machinery and stay as quiet as possible, all while hearing them psychos search the building for me. But thank God they would never find or deliver to me the same fate my young colleague dreadfully got, and the ones that was not shot down had been arrested once backup arrived to the scene. The suspects turned out to be a murderous cult who traveled from state to state kidnapping and killing people to satisfy their sick bloodlust. And the night that we went to the factory, the cult was torturing and preparing to murder a teenage girl, but were interrupted by me and my partner, who distracted them long enough for her to sneak away and escape, which then made us their ideal targets, where my partner literally sacrificed his life in order to save that girl's. I often think back on that night and think to myself, why couldn't it have been me instead of him? And I now live with regret of going in that building before backup arrived. I have been on the force for 11 years, where I have been shot at and stabbed in the arm and almost ran over by a maniac on the highway, but never once went through the scary situation I did back in 2015. That night started when I had my squad car parked next to the gas station just off the highway I patrolled, where I was eating the sandwich I had purchased, when the dispatcher broke the silence by telling me that there was reports of screaming coming from out of the woods near a residential area. So I put away my food and made my way over to the address that was provided. Upon arriving, I was met with a man who looked to be a Native American and who was the one that reported the screaming. And it didn't take long after I arrived for me to also hear what concerned the man, because the screaming would interrupt us mid-conversation. They were drawn out in very loud high-pitched screams that didn't sound human to me. They sounded almost like a cougar, but were long and a little deeper, so I requested for the man to head back into the safety of his home while I walked a good distance into his woods with my hand on my gun in case I needed to defend myself. But the whole time I was walking through the brush and thick forest, I could only see what my flashlight allowed me to, which was barely anything due to the pitch black darkness engulfing the tiny beam. So I went back to the owner of the property and told him that I didn't see or hear anything while searching the woods, and thought maybe that whatever was out there or whoever was out there most likely got scared off by my presence. And I also told him to call us back if anything else were to happen, and I'll return once again. Then I got back into my car and pulled out of the man's driveway and began my trip back to the gas station to finish my meal. But I would only make it to the entrance of the gas station before dispatch once again would tell me to head back to the residence because someone or something just tried to break into the man's house. Once returning to the residence, I could see that there was another squad car already there and was talking to the owner of the property, who was showing him the large gashes that was bashed into the outside of his front door. And from what I could tell, whoever did it was definitely human, since it looked like they were using an axe to try and gain entry into the home. And that's the moment that made that night a terrifying one, because that's when the screams started again. But it wasn't just one. There was a bunch of different screaming happening at once, and whoever they were surrounding the house. The three of us stood there looking at one another before the other officer ran back to his car to call for backup. But after he ran back on the porch where me and the homeowner were standing, the screaming stopped, and it was silence once again. Once around a dozen officers showed up, we all started to comb the woods the best we could without being able to see much, until we heard a fellow officer yell out in pain. After rushing through the woods, we would find him grabbing at his leg that was covered in blood due to a bear trap being wrapped around it. We freed him from the trap and then carried him back to his car, where we were able to call for an ambulance. We even questioned the property owner about the trap and asked him why he didn't let us know about it being there. But what he would say in response sent chills up my spine. He said that he doesn't even go into the woods due to the ones that scream in them, and that the bear trap belongs to them. And to tell you the truth, I believe him, because he is a single guy living out in the middle of nowhere by himself, and whoever or whatever tried to get into his home seems to be aggressive and violent. There was no other screams heard that night, at least while I was there, and the man never did call back to report anymore. I just hope that he either moved or bought himself some type of protection, because you never know who's lurking around at night. I used to patrol a neighborhood in my younger days as a police officer, where I've seen a lot of bad things happen to good people, whether it was a teenager being shot down in the streets or a woman being assaulted in an alleyway. There wasn't a shortage of crime around that place. But my worst experience was when my partner and I, who I'll call Officer Daniels, were sent to investigate a disturbance at a family residence, where a young lady had called in about a man trying to break into her home, where she had 3 young kids who were hiding in a room with her, while her husband stayed outside the door to fight off the intruder if he were to get in. So me and Daniels took the call and made our way over to the woman's property. Once we pulled up to the residence, we could see that the door had been forced open due to there being pieces of wood all over the floor and chunks missing from the door itself. And what most concerned me and Daniels was the blood that was all over the front porch leading out of the house and onto the road where it stopped, as if whoever was bleeding had climbed inside of a car and fled the scene. So we both did what we were trained to do and entered the house cautiously while yelling out the word police in order to let our presence be known. But we didn't get a response. The place just remained quiet and empty of any other people. We first made our way around the ground level of the house, clearing each room we entered at gunpoint, before making our way into the basement, where we would also not have any luck of finding the woman, her kids, or her husband. So we climbed back up the basement stairs and then began to ascend the steps leading to the second floor, where we would then hear a commotion coming from a room at the far end of the hall, which was the third door down to our right. So we held our guns and flashlights up ready for anything as we yelled for whoever was in the room to come out, But no one listened to our commands and stayed doing whatever it was they were doing to make the thud sounds. So we kicked in the door to the room, just to see a rugged-looking man beating another man in the head repeatedly with a baseball bat, as he laid there still and bloody. We shouted for the man to stop, which did get his attention as he looked back at us with his eyes wide and bloodshot, before he then began to charge us. We shouted once again for the rugged-looking guy to stop before we opened fire, dropping him before he reached the door. We would then check the pulse of the man that was being attacked to find out that he had passed away due to the trauma that was done to his head from repeated blows by the bat. The blood we seen when first arriving to the residence was that of the woman who called the police station, who was cut by the knife the intruder had before her husband started fighting with him in order for her and her kids to escape by leaving in their vehicle. And the man that was found dead by being beat to death was indeed the husband. The man that broke into the home and attacked the family that lived there was a recently released patient from a mental ward we all know as an insane asylum, which to me seems like he should never have been released, because if he wasn't, a father and a husband would still be alive today and would be with his family.
Congratulations, you have just graduated from Scary University.